Very good evening, everybody from all quarters, all walks of life. Welcome. First of all, a grand welcome to everybody who's joined other than Amara Raja. Amara Raja employees are also there. Our stakeholders across are there. Well-wishers on this call, on this webinar. Thank you so much for joining. We are indeed pretty overwhelmed by this kind of joining by people from several parts of the country. Great. A very, very good evening. Before we get started, I'm sure most of the people who are on this webinar are very, very familiar with the Amara Raja group, but humbly, just to share with you a little about the Amara Raja group. As all of us know, the Amara Raja group is a little diversified group. We have large businesses and small businesses. One of our largest flagship business is the batteries business that all of you would mostly know of, called as the Amara Raja Batteries Limited, which has two large businesses, which is the automotive business and the industrial business. We have Amara Raja Power Systems, we have Mangal Industries, we have Amara Raja Electronics, we have Amara Raja Infra, we have Amara Raja Media and Entertainment, we have our holding company, which is the Arangalla Family Private Limited, under which we also have the food businesses. So indeed, 7 different legal entities, 14 businesses, and our customers are not just in India. When it comes to it's across the globe, spread across 70 countries to which we even export. We even have offices slowly started even outside India. Proud of 16,000 plus employees. And today, as we speak, we are roughly around 1.2 billion as a conglomerate. So that's a little about our group. And today's webinar is all about we at Amara Raja getting together, coming together to share the kind of learnings and experiences that we have gone through thus far as this COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. It's indeed, when you think of it, there are different thoughts that come to you. It's a crisis situation. It is an adverse context. It has indeed impacted people and businesses, lives and livelihoods. Every organization and every institution, and even to that extent, even a family as an institution, has gone through this kind of a sudden adversity. Now we at Amara Raja has equally, like many of us, have got on to action. We are dealing still with this crisis. We are here and now. COVID-19 is not gone and we do not know. The only certain thing is that the uncertainty continues. At this context, we thought as a responsible corporate, we should not just be talking about our learnings and experiences within us. Why not share also to the larger communities, to stakeholders across? And this was the thought that we had. And in fact, experiences is one of our values. So here we are with 2 senior leaders coming before all of us to talk about how we went about transforming into the new way of life. So I have all the pleasure to introduce to you GVN, my good friend. GVN, as we call in short form, that's G. Vijay Naidu, Galla Vijay Naidu. GVN, as we all call him, and most people dearly call him so, is the President of Quality, Health, Safety and Environment, and also Continuous Improvements. More importantly, during this crisis, he is the chairperson of the Health, Safety, People and Communities Task Force. And therefore, he would be one of those people who would talk about the experiences that we have gone through as a corporate, as a group. We also have another senior leader, Vijayanand. Yes, Vijayanand. Yes, he's there. Vijay, you could show your hands as well. Yes.
Hi, JK.
Right. So Vijayanand is the CEO and president of Amara Raja Batteries Limited, one of our largest flagship businesses. And as we go through this crisis, he is the chairperson of the Business Continuity Task Force. So here we are, and my name is Jaikrishna, JK as people call me. So we will use the names as we call each other. In fact, Vijayanand is dear and near, as all of us call him, is junior. There is a big story to it. That would be a long story. So we have Vijay Naidu and Vijayanand. So Vijay Naidu being the senior person, the pet name for Vijayanand became junior. So let me not complicate. So it is GVN who is here, and junior, as I would possibly end up addressing many of the times during this discussion, to talk to us and share with us the experiences and learnings of managing this pandemic. So let me start off, GVN, if it's okay, if I were to start off with you.
Fine, JK. It's my pleasure.
So tell me, how did this all start for us as an organization, and what were some of our initial steps?
Thank you, JK, for the kind introduction and kind words. And on behalf of myself and Amara Raja, I also welcome all the external and also internal Amara Raja employees for this webinar. As we look back, a few months back, the pandemic that hit the world, in our weekly reviews at the Apex level, every week we report from the each functional level what are the events that are impacting or affecting our businesses at the group level. So early part of January, as a head of health and safety of the group, so I have shared saying that what is going on in China and Wuhan particularly, and also very quickly internally said that there are a few guidelines, and particularly the travel related, because we do business with many parts of the world, including materials that what we buy from them and the technicians that come in. So that's where I shared saying that this is something which is going to also maybe coming to India, whether we like it, we don't like it definitely. And internally, that's where the things started acknowledging, saying that there is a problem that is there. But actually, the real thing that started be a big surprise for all of us when we came, when we heard of that one of the technicians from Taiwan who came here for commissioning the equipment in Chittoor facility, the new facility that what is growing, had symptoms of some sickness, and then after checking our health center, went to refer to the government hospital, and the doctor immediately said that there are symptoms, and then maybe overcautious, referred to him to the government hospital at Tirupati. Actually, that's where the story started. We just went there, and then to over again, maybe a reaction from there. They said that they leaked it to the media, and media said that first patient, if not the COVID patient from Tirupati, and it's in the national news and breaking news. And we just suddenly got into the national news on a COVID related aspect. And next thing is within Amara Raja, what we did is with medical professionals, which we have it, and also the senior people formed quickly the team. Actually, it was, if I had to recall the date, it is 29th of February, which is, I think, a Saturday quickly. And we were almost throughout the night, we were spending phone calls, talking to others, and talking to the government. In that period of the time, even for sample collection, testing, and then it was a long story. Actually, it's a 2 to 3 days. You have to go to Hyderabad, and they only have to collect the sample and all this. During that time, this Taiwanese person was put into quarantine and without no facilities. And then we have to literally give the food that what he can eat, and also provide a TV for him to get the news across what is going on. And even a mobile charger for him, because he has to get connected. To cut the story short, I mean, 2 days later, we got the news that he is tested negative, to relief all of us. And we need to have to talk to the Taiwanese embassy and the Indian embassy using our corporate connections in the form of doing the business, ease of doing business, and then have to send him back to his home country. I think that's where the story is. And then we came the news. Fortunately, we were a bit prepared, because within our system of effects reviews, that's what we do. And what we done quickly after that was forming a corporate COVID task force, prevention task force within Amara Raja. And further to the guidelines, what was already issued, we quickly formed and then started acting and reacting to this, how we can, in case if something is going to hit us. And the next few weeks, we were getting ready with all the information that is related to the COVID, and how we can protocols on the mask and the physical distancing. We used to call social distancing earlier. Maybe now it's called physical distancing. And also one of the good practices, thermal screening of all the employees, and also travel guidelines for both internal and external. This is what we have done. I also have to just quickly bring back some of the good practices, if not the best practices, that Amara Raja uses over the long years of using the N95 equivalent masks within our system as a better system, if not the best system, of lead exposure to the employees, and which is a good thing. And also eating with the spoons, pre-mixed food. So that's one source of contamination. So this is how we quickly got into, and then formed the not only task force, there are a few other task forces that were formed. And when the lockdown was announced suddenly on March, Amara Raja Group is much more ready with all the communication that went into the preparedness, and also review at the apex level quickly, and also the task forces. And employees themselves were almost a lot of people, I mean, many of them are very ready and then knowledgeable on that. And even we have tried work from home concept. So even before the lockdown, I think this is what, the pilot things that was done. Maybe first time being a manufacturing organization. So that's where the initial reaction was. And when the relaxations also happened, so we were also ready with all the guidelines and things. But before that, when the lockdown announced, we were very quickly to put the safe shutdown of the facilities. In 33 years of my working career with all in Amara Raja, we have never ever stopped any facility. And so fortunately, good business, growing business, and also we were expanding, and the process also requires that. So we have to do it in a safe start, and with the best practices that Amara Raja has, and the systems that what we have, we went through that process of shutting down facilities in a gradual way, while we are keeping the essential staff to take care of the entire facilities, be it power, security, and then essential things. Because this is something which, and during the lockdown period also, there were VCs, virtual conference, video conferences available, and the senior management was ready, handy. And I should say that more than the leadership, I think the employees themselves, everyone, even at the workman level, were very involved and then getting into this. So that's what the story, and then how we went through this initial period of that. Thank you, Jay.
Right. Thank you. So, Jeevan, in a way, when you talk about that Taiwan incident, looking back, it's like it's a fortunate incident that you got it in terms of getting prepared as an organization. So, Junior,
boon, thank you. It is a boon for us to get that
Exactly.
the incident in our facility, and then we were much earlier ready for that. Thank you.
Right. So, Junior, when you think of what, according to you, were those initial events that comes to the mind, and what we did?
Yeah, JK, I'm pretty excited to be on this platform, sharing some of our recent experiences with a much wider audience. I know a lot of our internal stakeholders are relatively familiar with what we are speaking, but again, there are a lot of external stakeholders who are connected with us now. So it gives a great opportunity to share these learnings and experiences. If I recollect, quarter four is actually a very busy period for the business, primarily because we gear up for closing the financial year, and typically the Indian business cycle has a very busy quarter four. Most organizations experience that. And that's the period we do our long-term strategy planning, the 5-year strategy planning. So you're talking about 5-year outlook for the business, and which actually becomes the platform for planning your next year. So around mid-January, around that period, we were very busily engaged with our strat plan thinking, across the group in many businesses, visualizing how we need to navigate our business for the next 5 years. Also, while looking at how we need to close the year in a very strong mode. And then you get to hear about this news on Corona in China. Some of our suppliers who are based out of China, they start sharing a little bit of experience. And Chinese New Year typically occurs towards the end of January, beginning of February. We knew every year when we depend on Chinese sources, you try to pile up your inventory for that 2-week break that China typically takes. Those early signals started coming around the time when we started planning our inventory and materials for year-end spikes, the Chinese New Year break. I remember very clearly we had discussions in the business excoms where we said, maybe we got to be a little bit more careful. Maybe we got to plan for a little bit more material than what we would otherwise do. Because at the time, Corona was a distant news. Corona was happening in China. Corona was probably affecting some of our suppliers. It's like, the Australian bushfires, Corona in China, maybe some hurricanes in the southeast coast of US. It was a news item on internet. It was a news item on the TV. But we knew some of it will have ramifications on our short-term business. And interestingly, during the strat plan period, we also said, oh, if there is going to be disruption in the Chinese supply chain, will that throw up some opportunities for us on the demand side? Because there are these global customers of ours who are dependent on Chinese competition. So we thought if there is a disruption, maybe we should gear up for ourselves to see if we can, supplement that demand requirements. That was actually till 29th February, which is actually a leap year day this year, when Jagan Mohan, who is our head of operations, walked into my cabinet and said, hey, Vijayan, look, we had this Taiwanese technician who need to be taken to the government hospital because we are being a little extra precautionary to make sure his symptoms are not turning out to be Corona. So what was a news item on the TV suddenly started knocking you on your door.
Yes.
And we had to react. So I think, GVN is very right when he says this was an early pilot for us, kind of alert for us to start, preparing ourselves. So end of February, beginning of March, towards third week of March, I distinctly remember we had the senior leadership meetings. We had scenario planning started playing in our mind. I don't think we could visualize the scale of impact, but I think those early warning signals were ringing in our minds. And while there is safety, health related measures that were being taken, we started consolidating our views on how the business is likely to be impacted. Mind you, this was just after we have presented a 5-year plan to the board, thinking of 5 years, and now suddenly, being caught completely surprised what's happening next week. That's the kind of surprise that it brought to our business. But thankfully, I think, this is where I believe the intuitive response systems in the organization started putting the right people into the right, place in terms of putting together ideas. I don't think we ever really thought about a business continuity task force on the first week of March, but by third week of March, we started the germination of this task force idea. And we started looking at how are we going to close the financial year, and how are we going to plan for our immediate, quarter one. Annual operating plan was supposed to be presented for the batteries to the board on 28th March. Everything came to a standstill And, we know there is a COVID prevention task force. Then we started looking at how do we ensure business continuity happens. The classical understanding of business continuity is there is natural calamity disruption that throws the logistics haywire. There could be power interruption. There could be supply chain material shortage, maybe a fire hazard that can probably shut down some of your plants. This is the classical understanding of business continuity. But here we are talking about a health pandemic where it's likely to impact you, but we don't know the scale, we don't know the duration, and we don't know the depth. I think that's the kind of ambiguity and uncertainty in which these task forces were formed. And I think I got to give a lot of credit to the way we as a leadership team got into a lot of discussion sessions. And what you see on the screen here in terms of task force, we had the prevention task force, we had business continuity task force, but interestingly, we even talked about green zones and testing. Actually, that was much ahead of anybody else talking about those concepts in the Indian context. Can we create a green zone in our manufacturing facility? What kind of testing protocol do we need to follow? I remember Jay at that time, when he had an opportunity on a teleconference talking to the Prime Minister, actually representing saying that why don't you allow large private industries to have their own testing programs so that that burden is not on the government health infrastructure. Private enterprises can take care of the testing requirements.
Yeah.
These are very early thoughts. And of course, being committed to community, CSR always comes as a natural response from our side. And the communications, I would let you speak about that because you're championing it. Communicate was a cliched word till that point of time in many seminars. And this is where we are living it day in, day out. How do we reach our people? How do we let them know what's happening? How do we take feedback from them on what's going in their mind? It's no longer business, it's no longer workplace. It's about the employee, their extended family, their neighborhood, and of course, multiple stakeholders. I think that was, looking back, though it's not too long ago, just about 2.5 months ago or 3 months ago, looking back, I think that those early days really brought out, I think, a very inspiring natural response from the organization. There was no playbook that we were following because nobody was prepared, nobody was trained, nobody was, coached on how to handle a situation like that.
Yeah. In fact, from a global perspective itself, this is something which was never in the prediction list or anything for that matter, right? Where is the question of thinking of a crisis management book or anything that is documented would have a pandemic being so much thought through? Yes, of course we were. So, Junior, you talked about saying a lot of intuitive actions, right? And I think our values of the Amara Raja way itself made us do a lot of actions. So, GV, if I were to pick up from that and ask you, while the initial thing was all about intuitive things that we were doing as leaders, and along with all our teams, who putting their best foot forward in this crisis. Later, as Junior said, we started structuring as various task forces. So from there, so in that initial madness, I'm sure all of us collectively brought some method to the madness. So can you share some of those structured actions that were taken as health, safety, people, and communities task force?
Yes, okay. Like in Amara Raja way and then Amara Raja core purpose, core values, got to be a better way. So initially, when we quickly formed the teams and then started working on what should be addressed so that the initial response to those of safe shutdowns, and then when government started talking about relaxing during lockdown 2 and 3 like that. So we also looked at the structure of the task forces again. That's why you can see that from earlier prevention task force, now HSPC, which is health, safety, people and communities, or society, if you have to put it that way. So this is the task force. Of course, CSR is also part of that. And there are other task force continue to be business continuity and also scenario planning and pivot strategies and communication, definitely. With 16,000 strong employees, many of them from the areas that what we are operating. And this is something task forces were formed. And I had a privilege and lucky that I got the position to lead this HSPC task force, maybe because of my role as the head of the safety, health and safety environment. In addition to that, so far what was done, but I have very capable team with me, with his two doctors or medical professionals, and also senior people uh, from HR, from other functions into this. And the initial focus was again, how can we safe start again? So that's a very critical, because the people who would have been away from the office, factory, like I said, 30 years, several of the operators are also long years. So we have to quickly see that what is the best, safest way to start in a safe manner, safeguarding or all of people first. That's where people and then assets related to that. And in addition to that, many other aspects of well-being of the people, and some of those things which we were focusing as a team is engaging them on a continuous basis. While I said that, there are many ways of things that were introduced during this period. In fact, even communication and also capturing or asking them where they are through the digital technology. First time we have rolled it out. In fact, you know better than me on that. The last person using the mobiles, and how can they be in using the technology that's there. And also development of standard operating procedures given by this Ministry of Home Affairs and also the state government, the best practices also from the World Health Organization, and also from the Center for Disease Control from US. All of this plus our own good practices, putting the standard operating procedures is what we have prepared, and then also used it across for the people. And not just standard operating procedures will help. In fact, we have to also get into creating that required infrastructure for those. And when we talk about Amara Raja people safety management of people who are attending the work and also people who are away at home, so what we have asked a US company to develop a technology platform, web-based, so that each of them can assess themselves based on their risk, based on their few days and weeks of earlier history of risk profile, and also generate a pass for entering to the premises.
Clearance for work. Yeah.
Clearance for work, and which includes thermal scanning. So it is a company called Doxiva, which are actually again medical professionals in US of Indian origin who did this work, and in fact they did a great job, and each of them can personally see that and get the clearance for work. And in addition to that, the protocols on mask usage and many other aspects, we have also, after launching this, we have also trained our people to audit these processes, because so it is not infra that is going to be, it is also several aspects of compliance to this. And because it's a new way, I mean, for everybody to know. So hundreds of people are trained to audit this and then bring back to where the gaps are, and then empowered to correct then and there itself. So this is something which is very key for this. While infra is created, and then very happy to share that all the discussion that happened in the task force, when it went to the next level of apex level, so it is also cleared quickest possible way, and then this was deployed, because the prime is the safety is the concern and important. And also the consents and approvals. The HSP task force was empowered to give all the consents and approvals required, even for people to do this. And again, the videos, the posters, and the communication, and the document which was prepared, and then not only for internal. In fact, when some of the customers and suppliers asked for a copy of, we were liberally giving it to everybody. So it is good for us, good for society, good for everybody. So it went on. In fact, we do have got the appreciations from several of domestic and international our customers as well as our partners, saying that this is one of the best documents on the COVID period for this. So this is something which, while we were, the task force was doing, we were also part of the other task forces to take some of those inputs and create that, because our customers are key to us while we ramp up our operations, and compliance is that the people related to safety aspects of it. So while I said engaging, there is a story I just wanted to share. While we're engaging the employees, there are, during the survey, people also talked about during this lockdown period and also ramp up period, they were all at home. They said one of the best practices of lean manufacturing is 5S. So they said, why don't you give some inputs to us so that we will implement the 5S at homes? So this went on, a beautiful document was prepared, 5S at homes. And then
we even had a competition also, right?
Yeah, we even have a competition.
5S at home competition. Yeah.
5S at home competition. So the CA team should get credit for that.
I remember the entire leadership pulling your leg, GV, and that you will win it because you won't allow anybody else to win it. But anyway, good that you didn't participate, because otherwise you would have been the winner. Right?
No, thank you. The guideline says that not eligible for participation. Yeah. Even if I would have participated, I'm sure there are a lot of people who would have done better than me, because it's
definitely amazed by the kind of actions that people took, and send their pictures as well. Yeah. So thanks.
No, this is, sorry. Just let me take one more minute. This is just one example. There are at least 30-40 different things were done, people related, and then I'm not narrating all of that. Just one.
I think one of the biggest things that typically I would recall is that digital enablement. As the lockdown took us by surprise, if you remember, Junior, that we collectively, that time the leadership was meeting twice daily, right? Morning, 10 o'clock we have a meeting, and then 9 p.m. in the night. That's how we were going ahead about it. And then we took this decision to go ahead and do the digital enablement so that we can get in touch with our people and get to know where they are. So that was one of the biggest aims, and that really helped. And like you later said about the Amara Raja People Safety Management System, working that out today so people know what does it mean to be health conscious and so on and so forth. Great. Thanks, Jivian.
I just have one more quick.
Sure, go ahead.
We also said that a procedure required in case if there is somebody who is going to be touch wood the symptoms and test positive, emergency response management system. So instead of reacting on the day, so have a well-defined procedure so that everybody is very clear what to do, and then it's taking care of him and disinfection, and also instead of shutting down the facilities, this is one of those. And to sum it up at the end, so there are 3-4 key things that what is required. We said that wearing the mask and cleaning the hands thoroughly with 20 seconds with soap or sanitizer, physical distancing. This is a very key in this issue. So physical distancing. So this is something which is spread.
I remember in HSPC we keep on saying MHD, mask, hand hygiene, distancing. And today as we speak, we are communicating to employees to be the change. And we want to let them know that they got to be disciplined and follow these things very, very religiously. Fine. Thanks, Jivian.
Thank you.
Sure. So, Junior, from business continuity, what were some of those actions that were taken in a structured fashion? I mean, what exactly was some of those concrete steps that was taken, and it actually helped the group?
Yeah, JK, if you were to look at the structuring of the business continuity task force, we realize that the focus is on 3 buckets. One, you got to make sure that there is a supply chain system that's safeguarded. Then you have to also map that with the fluctuating and uncertain demand. And to manage these 2 things, we need to see how the operational teams are working. Now, typically operational teams, we take it for granted that people are available. And in this situation, that was not the case because there were lockdown conditions. Even if somebody is keen to come to the workplace, we were not encouraging them to come considering the safety related risks. So we put together teams representing entire operational heads in the businesses. There were actually even the business heads who were represented in some of the businesses. For example, we had Sarjan, Divakar, VK representing some of the businesses. We also had business HR leaders being there in that the continuity task force. And then the services division, whether the administrative services or the infra services, those representatives were there because they are the people who actually make things happen on the ground, to get people to the workplace, to feed people, to provide the support services required. They got to be looped into the operational uncertainty or operational dynamics that we are involved in. So it meant that we are able to put the heads of all these key people together, and this is done at the group level. So if there are helping hand that need to be extended for one of the business because that business has a higher demand than the other business which may not be having the demand, we were able to share resources. So that helped a lot to get a holistic view of what the organizational context is with respect to the kind of uncertainty around us. The second aspect is we really needed a clear visibility to what's happening. There is this emotional aspect of it, there is this intuitive response of it, but how do we get a common view of what's happening in the business? Which meant we need to know how many people are actually attending the workplace, which location people are coming, what kind of requirement is there in that location. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is to have a clear view of inventory, and we need to know where is money locked up, where is material locked up. There's a lot of material on the roads when the lockdown was announced because year end, a lot of trucks were leaving our factory and they were getting stagnated because of the logistics challenge. The third aspect is the financial aspect because that's another critical thing. Are we having enough cash on hand to survive an unspecified period in the future? Is it going to be 15 days, 30 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? We were trying to figure that out. Now, I want to just let everybody know that we went through an S4 HANA system design, and dashboard design is one of the key aspects of it. And there are a lot of dashboards, but they realized none of those dashboards are really handy at this stage because those dashboards were never designed for a situation like this. So there are multiple new dashboards that were turned overnight. But you need to make sure data is coming from reliable sources to that information. So there is a single source of truth that's providing info into these dashboards. And those dashboards make a meaningful understanding of what's happening. And this is important for us to know what's happening in the morning and what's happening in the evening. These dashboards have life cycle that are in hours, right? So you got to have dynamic information flow come to them. And those dashboards should help us make some decisions on the feet, on the run. So I think that's where the structured approach comes. I want to put one thing here that normally we believe change management in an organization is an evolving process, takes a lot of effort, walk the talk and all of that. But during that period, the speed at which change is happening and the speed at which people are adapting to the changes was mind-boggling, right? Vijay did talk a lot of measures on the safety and health aspect of it. Get a new safety practice imbibed and culturized. It takes so much effort, but we are talking about bundles and bundles of that here, and people were being fed that information. They were internalizing it, they were practicing it, and there are audits to make sure whether they're practicing or not. Similarly, on the business side, we were making decisions which probably we would do once a month. Now we are making those decisions every day, and then you need to make sure everybody is aware of it and they're executing those decisions. So I think that's a level of dynamism which meant when there is a need, the organizational response is able to keep pace with the speed at which those changes are required. So I'm looking at closing the financial year end, then getting into April, which is a complete void. There's absolutely no activity. But then I want to highlight here there were some businesses that really needed to work during that period. Our telecom infrastructure support business was very essential because everybody was relying on data. You are all connected on data networks. So we got to make sure the telecom networks are functioning. we have direct responsibility for almost 5,000 plus towers in this country where power supply need to be ensured 24/7. And I'm pretty happy to report there were 400 odd people on the field at very difficult environments and circumstances using their own method of transport without violating the safety norms that are kind of provided as a guidance, ensuring that there's 99.98, 99.99% uptimes on those telecom towers. And then Vijay talked earlier.
And beyond all that, they also getting involved on CSR work on themselves. Absolutely. Without any note.
Yeah, these teams were trying to do what they are required to do from a professional responsibility, but they were also taking a social responsibility mantle on their shoulders. And I know one of our colleagues in Delhi was actually cooking food for 50 odd laborers in the neighborhood, tying up with his colleagues. Yeah. That was not an organizational mandate to him. It's coming more out of a social responsibility, ownership that they had shown. On the operational side, we had to make sure the phases shutdown meant some essential service staff needed to be available. At one point of time, we had challenge of actually telling people, "Oh, please don't come. We are getting more people than necessary." So there was a lot of, I would say, ownership of responsibility that people felt, and then they were always willing to come to workplace. So to channelize all this commitment, to channelize all these efforts into a structured aspect, to make sure there is information visibility provided to everyone, and then think ahead of time, think next week, think week after that, so that you are not lagging behind in your responses, was absolutely critical. I want to also give one anecdote here. Look at the way, sometimes these things happen. Our foods business was dealing with a challenge of don't have enough people to deal with, of course. Second thing is they are cash strapped in some sense, but that was the tomato season for the region, which means farmers were getting the harvesting of tomato fruits and they don't know where to go. So if you are not processing the tomato, those have 2 days, 3 days kind of shelf life and it will be a waste. And Divakar, who is heading the foods business, brought it to the attention of the GROCOM. There was a special approval given for enhancing the working capital of a business. At a situation where every rupee is seen as very precious, we said, let's enhance the working capital. We bought a lot of fruit from the farmers, processed it. The district administration, including the collector, had a huge appreciation because there were not many firms who were trying to do this. Now that's business intertwined with the social communities around us. Similarly, on the telecom I spoke about, we also have certain seasonal demand, which meant that the businesses have to operate at a much higher peak level compared to what we would do otherwise in the rest of the year. But this was at a time when pandemic was crippling or paralyzing everything else around us. So I think those measures that we have taken, what started as an intuitive response, then providing a structural framework to that, having a organizational do's and don'ts around it, and then a decision-making process about it, getting everybody involved so that there is a clear visibility to what's happening around them and what is their role in that aspect. That's the way the madness has been converted slowly into a methodical approach to navigate through the crisis. And then over the 10 weeks period, it became much better and better and better.
True. In fact, being the people's accountable person, that I know it comes to the mind, like Junior, you spoke about a situation during lockdown where people over-reported. And we were, to be truthful, I mean, to all the viewers here, we had our own nervousness whether people would report, when we get back, as we, get back the situation. And we were pleasantly surprised that while there were a lot of neighboring companies and the region having its own challenges of getting people back, as we speak today, we have something like 95 to 100% of our people back at work. And we had absenteeism on its reverse. I mean, our normal absenteeism, which used to be around 10%. And during lockdown, it actually came down. I mean, that's the power of the Amara Raja way, and more importantly, our strongest belief of the non-migratory employment. That's something. So, Jeevan, if you...
I remember, typically, it's great to have organizations where leaders inspire the rest of the talent in the organization, but there are very, very many moments where we are actually having the reverse mentoring happening where our employees inspire the leaders by the
True.
way they respond to the situation.
True. So, Jeevan, a little about non-migratory employment. You may want to
Yeah.
emphasize when we say, what is that?
Sure, JK. In fact, from the beginning, from 1985, when the foundation was laid to now,
Right. Yeah.
it's more than 80% of them are from local employment. And then these are all the people from the rural places, trained, and then have been doing a great job. And
Sure.
ordinary people doing some of the extraordinary work. That's what it is. So in a short. So in fact, this is the one which, in fact, a great strength in Amara Raja, which we have been saying, and in fact, it is proved now when the situation is there. Many industries around this area with workforce from other states, and then they went back. They are having a lot of pressure now. Whereas within Amara Raja Group, we, as I said earlier, it is 95 to 98%. In fact, some of them are 100% reporting back. So this is definitely an emotional contact, and then a caring organization, and it is also felt by them. So this is something which across the
We
country also
strongly
many
believe. In fact,
sequences are talking
for
about.
the benefit of all the audience, non-migratory employment was one of the strongest beliefs of the founder. Dr. Ramachandran Gala, who is our founder chairman, who strongly believed that industries should be set up in rural areas and do not allow the people to migrate off. It should be non-migratory. So it's much more meaning making than the sons of the soil that typically people speak of, and that really reap benefits. In fact, there is a report even submitted to CII early days on how the government should do, and the government also did take some actions at that point of time. So it's a very, very important thing that today we realize the power of non-migratory employment.
Just to supplement that, Amara Raja also has put up a skill development center, which is running now, and again, taking the rural talent of school dropouts and training them with
in fact, that reminds me, sorry, Jeevan, to cut you, the Dean School Skill Development Center, people are wondering because those are young students, they have to also go and sit at home. We have not opened it. But even there also, the faculty doing webinars, connecting with the alumni of the Skill Development Center batches, which are, most of them are there in our own factories. Doing classes with them, online webinar sessions for the faculty development, all these were also happening. In fact, when you think about it, Junior G, I'm sure this time is not enough. There is a lot of questions pouring. I don't know, I'm getting a little distracted. I'm hoping that some of our questions will be answered. But quickly, Junior, back to you. I wanted to ask, we spoke so much about employees, our own, internal team members. What about our other stakeholders? And I'm able to quickly see some questions on that. What did we do for customers? What did you do for our partners? I'm sure we did, but Junior, from your perspective, as a group, what did we do?
Yeah, JK, I think, in the entire response that we have had for COVID, it's very difficult not to factor in the anxiety and inputs of the other stakeholders, particularly the customers. This is a emergency, or this is a crisis that has impacted every government, every nation, every business, every institution, every individual family. So it's not that you are actually having a flooding in your factory and you have to reach out to customers who don't understand what it is and who don't experience what it is. Everybody is in the same storm, but not everybody is in the same boat, as I heard in some other interview, right? So we were caught up in the same storm, but each one is sailing in their own boat. So it's important for us to understand them. And one other way we thought, for example, take the consumers. Now we've visualized as what would happen to our, say, Amaran consumers. We knew when the lockdown was extended 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we understand what happens to a battery inside a vehicle. And what happens if tomorrow the customer wants to take his vehicle out for any emergency? That's where we said, let's have this jumpstart campaign carried out. So we kept that in mind. It was a very successful campaign. It meant reaching out to clusters of residential communities, working with the associations there, having a free camp conducted to ensure that if anybody has any flat battery or a discharger battery that's not helping the vehicle to start, how people are there to help them. It doesn't matter which battery they have. It doesn't matter which type of car it is. It doesn't matter how old the vehicle is. We were there. We were trying to help them. I already talked about how we took care of the telecom networks. In fact, I want to quote one anecdote. One of our telecom customers who has a large MSC site in Bangalore wanted a backup battery to be replaced on emergency because he had a problem with the power backup. We came to know about it 9 o'clock in the night. We talked to our CFA who was operating the warehouse. They came and opened the warehouse at midnight. 5 o'clock, we could get the batteries delivered. 7 o'clock, the first battery bank was commissioned. 11 o'clock, the second battery bank was commissioned. So in less than 12 hours after the customer reached out to us, we were able to replace a very critical backup power installation overnight with the commitment of multiple stakeholders involved, the warehouse manager and our service teams, our supply chain teams at the back end, the commercial documentation required to be done. The other thing is OE sector was going through a lot of stress. So we had to listen to them as to what their plans are, recalibrate our operations accordingly. And in many other businesses, for example, we have done the infrastructure business. We need to understand what is the customer plans in re-looking at the project timelines. We had a lot of migratory employee workforce that we were dealing with. So we had to rehabilitate them or take care of their well-being during that period. I already talked about the foods business. Actually, summer is when the mango crop harvesting is done and the processing peaks at that point of time. So we had 200 odd people from one of the business going and volunteering to work for the foods business to take care of their peak requirements. It was to work with the farming community. So then I personally have sat through virtual partner meets, both domestic partners that we have, the Amaron franchisees, the Power Zone retail partners, and C&FA partners that we had. We had international distributors that we were connecting with on virtual platform. Having been locked up for 40, 45 days at home and not stepping out, suddenly when you are on these virtual meets, it's like virtual touring the country and touring the world. And it gave them a tremendous amount of comfort and confidence because they now understand what's going on in the company thinking, what's the company's actions being taken out. And they were going through similar lockdowns in their own countries, and they knew they have similar problems. So they were looking at how we will be able to reactivate or come back to the supply support requirements for them. So then the supply chain part of it, the vendors, we need to understand somebody stuck in Pune, somebody stuck in Mumbai, or maybe a consignment held up in some port. So we are to, I think, Venkat Madhav and his team on the supply chain was very well connected with all the supply chain partners that we have. So it was definitely a 360-degree effort. It was not an inward-looking effort. We had to reach out to external stakeholders, and we had to have a methodical approach to that. I think at the end of the day, it helped out very well. We haven't had lost even a single shift of production because we ran out of material. We haven't had even a single shift of production or demand loss because we ran out of people. I think it's a well-calibrated recovery path that we are navigating through.
True. Thank you very much. I think we have another 5-8, not even, we got a 7 minutes. I think we should look at possibly some of the questions, if in case they are not answered. I am taking a quick look, so the audience requests me to bear with us. We are taking a look. I think some of these have been answered, I hope, on the integral part of the culture. Healthcare facilities, yes, GVN spoke about. We have our own occupational health center. The quarantine rooms are built in. Several efforts. In fact, as we speak now, we are actually evaluating another health app as well. Quite an effort in terms of healthcare is being taken. But I would like to say here openly I don't think I need the consent of both GVN as well as Vijayanand. GVN, if you could just share out your email ID, you could share it out so that people who have, feel free to write to us and we will try and respond at the earliest. GVN, go ahead.
It's gvn@amararaja.com. Let me repeat it. G for gold, V for victory, N for new. GVN.
Right. So also
Amara Raja.
Yes. Junior, if you could also say yours, Vinand. correct?
You can reach out to me at VNAND, VNAND,
Good. Okay.
VNAND
Good. I
at
think that's fine, Junior,
amara-raja.com.
because Shekhar is offering that he will let know all the panelists on the email ID. So feel free. I mean, like GVN and Junior said, we are doing this webinar also not that because we have learned everything. We all of us are in this crisis together. As a responsible corporate, we felt we should do this and you are already by now on how to deal with a COVID positive case, if at all you have at the workplace. Sure. So the other question is, of course, there are also questions about wanting to restart the career in Amara Raja. More than welcome. Why not? We have several cases like that of people who have rejoined. We are always happy to do that. In fact, sooner or later we will have an alumni club also starting. In fact, okay. Before I think some of these questions are answered, and but I don't want one thing to be missed out. To you, GVN, can you say from your top of the mind what has been some of your personal learnings? When I say yours, as an individual, you and your family, your team, their families, from that perspective, what has been your learnings? Briefly.
Yeah, I will quickly say that before that, there is one task force which is, I missed it earlier, which is
yeah, there are a lot of things we have missed for sure.
no, but very important because
Yeah,
it is chaired by, I mean, it is COVID data and analytics chaired by Ramana Prasad Alam, who is a good friend of mine and classmate. Yes. And the way that it was being presented and then analysis and then making
it was
again
very useful. Yeah.
Very useful in this crisis.
I think we showed that on the slide. Very true.
It is there on the slide, but that is something which is very useful for even for everybody, because from the international to the local, what is the way it is happening and then how it will impact you in the area that what you are operating. For the audience, this is a very important thing that you need to capture this and then do it. And my own personal learning, because I have been a manufacturing person, in fact, in the specialist, if I have to call myself. In 30 plus years, I have been on the shop floors and in the thick of the action. First time away from the shop floor, right? So it's not like software personnel who is sitting away and in the thick of action. So a great learning to use some of these tools, although we are familiar with, but how to be productive, how to be more effective. And in the situation like this, in the context like this is a great learning. Being myself as a good reader, but more importantly, spending more than 12, 14 hours with the Zoom calls and then from one meeting to another meeting. So that's simple, how to be productive, how to be effective. That's one great learning for me. Even family, been talking to family members and also close relatives. One of those critical aspects during this period is the emotional discomfort, because they have to be lonely for many weeks and months in some of them. Even if I had to talk about my son who is in US, because it was actually a lot of movement and social things and others. So this is something which they need to cope up with, and then anxiety particularly. Yes. So that is something what we have seen with the people. So they have to go through this, but good times are going to be there. And it's not the COVID is not, while it is no solution yet, vaccine point of view, but this is something which is at the organization level. Great learning, one of them is when Jay comes out in every meeting with a new idea of something. And he talked about Jaidev Gala, Vice Chairman of the group. Yeah. And in fact, we were so lucky that it's a lot of time that he is able to spend now compared to earlier. But one of those key tasks that he has given it to us, the organization, is to handle these type of shocks into the future. An organization or a society or a family have to deal with these type of shocks. Whether we like it or not, it's going to come. The quickest response will the one which will help you within few hours, within 8 hours, within few days, like that. So what is being done is a shock playbook, which covers not exhaustive list, but some of those things, which will the response and who will do what, how to do it, and the procedures, the training part of it, the good part of it. The young minds have involved in preparing this.
Sure.
These are from premier institutions. These are the people who prepared it and reviewed it, and then it's available. That's a key learning for the organization.
Thank you.
Having
Thank
crossed
you,
that 30 years and then
sure.
future.
Yeah, Junior, about you. What about your personal learnings as a leader, as an individual, you and your family, when you think from your team and their families?
Yeah, JK, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is this 90 days taught me to be a lot more effective reader. I would have read about 300 plus reports. Some of those reports going to 90 pages, 150 pages. In a typical reading that you would do, probably you would try to get to too much detail. But I think this taught me the speed of reading, learning, the essence of these reports. There are WhatsApp information flow, a lot of mails coming in. What do you want to clearly derive an essence out of it? I think I became much more efficient in learning by reading. That's number one. Number two, from a business perspective, we realize how much of a prediction you do, you have no guarantee that it will turn out. So don't predict, be prepared. I think that applies for future as well. While there could be multiple scenarios that you can think of, but you don't know which of that is likely to play out, be prepared for what it is. So another way to look at it is, hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. That's another mindset change that really happened. It's not about me. I think it's the organization as a whole who prepared. Finally, I think one word that comes to my mind is trust. I think we could mandate a lot of procedures. We could mandate a lot of policies, but you got to trust people, because people have a willingness to do their best, provided you create an environment of that. I'm not talking about people inside the organization. I'm talking about customers. Typically, you believe customers are very demanding, but in this situation, I found actually customers are a lot more willing to listen to you, a lot more willing to trust you. Similarly, the partners, there was a question I read through in this where they're saying, how did you help the partners? In fact, we have loosened our, in terms of our credit policy, we believed they are going through difficulties and we had to liberalize our credit policy. We gave additional time to collect money from the market and pay us. And that created tremendous trust in them that, they believe the organization.
And the fact as an organization, we sort of recognize the power of resilience. Which we were talking in GrowCom. That was coming back and forth as the theme itself,
Yeah, so if we were to do enterprise risk planning as a standard approach, we were in a denial mode whenever we think of a major crisis, but put the same set of people into the crisis, you saw how they responded. That's the trust you need to put on them.
So appreciate.
So I think learn, prepare, and trust. These are the three words.
Yeah, GB.
So we have been asking questions. I would like to ask you a question to yourself. So what are your learnings? So I know we have worked together for a long time on these tasks. What are your learnings?
Yeah. Sure. With the permission of the audience, we'll take a little time on that and then I will conclude. Personally, I think I've been sharing this also. I think I got myself, or rather I carved out personally a lot of time on reflection. And one thing I recognize today with the interaction of, be it with the team, everybody, and I keep sharing this, have clearly the mindset of a warrior and also have an attitude of a savior. This is something that I have been sharing, and I think and I also drew up this rough sketch about, I think the other day also I spoke in a public discussion about the concept of resilience in my own way when I started thinking about it. Having the patience and persistence, which is the PACE concept that I wrote myself, to say P standing for patience and persistence, A for anticipation and attention, which we need to have at this point of time, C, which I define it as courage and confidence, and of course E, all of us would agree, encourage your people, empathize your people, but also don't forget to empathize your business as well. So those were some of my personal learnings, I would say. Thanks, JBN, for that opportunity.
Thank you. I just would like to say something quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
With your permission again.
Sure.
I think all of us have to thank one of the medical officer of Amara Raja Group, Chandrababu Naidu, who is, and his team. In this period, I think there's tremendous amount of information that they captured, prepared it, and I'm just saying out. I know there are hundreds of people.
There are hundreds of people. In fact, I was just going through some of the points that we just noted down before the webinar.
Okay.
I realized there is so much more to cover, but I hope this was informative.
Quickly, another point is that agility, resilience, and stay calm. I think that's what we have seen with
the hallmarks
all levels of the organization in this crisis. Sure. And those are the hallmarks of some of those.
Vivian, your hallmark is to keep on time, so I think we should close now. So 5 o'clock. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for the invite. This is one of our first webinars, and we hope if we have a good feedback, we will come back again, not with the same 3 people, but we will come back on new topics. Some of the things that we are thinking for the next webinar would be predominantly from medical professional world. We will be talking most probably Dr. Ramadevi Gaurneni. She will come and speak, and we are planning to host this sometime during July. We will do something on sleep and how to strengthen sleep and how it will boost your immunity. In fact, internally, we are doing a lot of webinars. Day after tomorrow, we are planning something exclusively for our own employees on dry ice so that it helps people in terms of working from home, constantly being on the system today. We are planning something on nutrition to boost immunity and so on and so forth. But we will bring some of these even as public webinars for larger use. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you so much, Junior.
Thank you, Vijayanand.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.